This video is sponsored by Tabletop Stronghold. I was reading a bunch of different Space Marine chapter lore, and one that really caught my attention was the Astral Knights. And that came from the very first line of their description. It read, "The Astral Knights was." Ooh, that's a spooky word in that context. The Astral Knights was a Space Marine chapter, but they aren't anymore. The imagination immediately runs wild. What happened to these Space Marines? Now, in the lore, Space Marines are incredibly powerful. Not so much on the tabletop. Every single game I play, I lose about 50 Space Marines. But in the lore, a Space Marine is a very powerful thing. A chapter is 1,000 battle brothers, and honestly, a couple of dozen can face almost any odds and return victorious. But the Astral Knights didn't. And it wasn't just the general attrition of the endless war that is 40k, but it was from one singular battle. These guys are pretty cool. To make my little Astral Knight, I went through my collection of Intercessor sprues looking for something that would make this Space Marine feel like a lone survivor. Technically, the Astral Knights would have been destroyed before the Mark 10 Tacticus armor, but it's pretty similar to the old stuff, and it looks better anyway, so I don't mind using something slightly anachronistic. I found this Assault Marine leg and torso that had some really nice movement to it, and I clipped off some bits to decorate this guy. The Astral Knights wear bare metal armor, so any accessories will be a good opportunity to work in some more colors. I attached a knife to his belt, carving away a little bit of extra material to get it to fit perfectly, and one of these little reliquaries with a purity seal on his front. Now, this Marine's body is meant to have a chainsword and heavy bolt pistol, but there's no reason it can't have a bolter. I cut off one of these from the regular Intercessor sprue, and if you're planning on having both Assault Intercessors and regular Intercessors in your army, I would highly suggest getting them both at the same time and swapping the parts around. They are completely interchangeable, and you'll be getting a little extra uniqueness out of your collection. I glued on a drum magazine to the bolter and then attached it into position, and I think this bolter looks really good in this running pose. I mixed up some green stuff to attach his shoulder pads, making up a little ball, squishing it into some glue, and then squishing down the shoulder pads so that I can get them attached securely and in the exact pose I want. I also threw an Assault Marine shoulder pad to get him a little bit more variety. Now for the head, and I do want to use an older helmet, but I find old Space Marine helmets look kinda weird on normal bodies, so digging through my collection, I found these alt heads from Tortuga Bay. I wasn't super happy with these when I got them. I feel like the eyes are too big, so I haven't used them yet. But you don't know unless you try, so I glued down the head. Now I have my little fella ready for one final epic battle, and given him a once over, I just noticed I forgot to drill out the bolter barrel. I like to do this before gluing them on because the plastic glue can slip, but it's been long enough that it's on there pretty solid, so I can get the job done. The Astral Knights chapter is destroyed. It doesn't exist anymore, although they went out in an absolute blaze of glory. The Imperium was fighting against a new Necron superweapon threat, which I would argue Necrons don't have nearly enough superweapons. The Necrons should be OP. They already fought a galactic war, the War in Heaven, but it's not just a galactic war, a galaxy of battles. A galactic war meaning solar system versus solar systems. Stars versus stars, literal gods being killed. The Necrons are so cool and so advanced that the Eldar are primitive in comparison to their technology. And speaking of this technology, this superweapon, the Borsis, was a giant planet-sized mobile tomb world, and it was completely indestructible. The Imperium was losing badly. This brings the Astral Knights into the story. They, seeing the inevitable defeat against this Necron technology, decided to ram their ship into the cube. It wasn't necessarily a cube, I just like to imagine a Borg cube. They rammed into it. The surviving Space Marines fought their way through the ship until they found the shield generator and took it down, allowing the rest of the Imperium to finally be able to destroy this thing. This maneuver saved the day, although it led to the destruction of the Astral Knights chapter. Although, not every single Astral Knight is dead. According to the lore, canonically, there are 30 Astral Knights and a Dreadnought still around. That Dreadnought makes all the difference. These remaining Marines were absorbed into the Sable Swords chapter as the coolest veterans to ever exist, and I would assume a couple of them are probably fighting as Black Shields with the Death Watch. I feel like this lore gives hobbyists two really cool options when putting together a force of these guys. Number one, you set them pre-absorption into the Sable Swords, and you hold yourself to just 30 Marines in a Dreadnought. Or you actually build a Sable Swords army where all of your lieutenants, captains, and sergeants as veterans of the Astral Knights. Either way, I think it'd be pretty cool. To give my little Astral Knight a base, I grabbed a Cobalt Keep 32mm magnet base. I like using magnet bases because it makes it a breeze to transport models to and from the game store. And it works perfectly with the Mag Haze 2.0 from Tabletop Stronghold. Tabletop Stronghold is a one-man operation based out of the mountainous state of West Virginia, which I hear is almost heaven. And mountains are doubly appropriate for the absolute mountain of hobby goodies available from Tabletop Stronghold. The Mag Case 2.0 is a durable, dapper carrying case for holding and transporting your entire tabletop army. With a clear plastic front that lets you see your prize collection, and slim metal trays and included 3x2mm magnets, you can securely transport your collection safely. With the power of magnets. And with 24 available slots inside, you can pack your case for maximum efficiency. Tabletop Stronghold can do more than just transport your minis to and from the game though. With the Tabletop Stronghold Competitive Terrain Set 2.0, you can have a tournament-level table set up in minutes. Crafted for Warhammer 40k with balanced line-of-sight blocking, cover, fair layouts for tactical gameplay, and modular 1-inch, 2-inch, and 4-inch wall sections all made a sturdy MDF board. In one afternoon building, I now have an impeccable tournament regulation Warhammer 40k game board, so I can crunch out practice games against Sean without ever needing to worry if he's cheating. The Tabletop Stronghold Competitive Terrain Set 2.0 is perfect. If you're looking for a great case to transport your minis, using the power of magnets, or an absolute table's worth of terrain, Tabletop Stronghold has got you covered. And Tabletop Stronghold is having a spring sale of up to 30% off, running until the end of the month, and you can check it out linked in the description below. I want to make a Necron base like he's wandering through that super weapon. And to give it a Necron-y feel, I got some bits from the Invaded City bits pack. This has some nice alien glyphs that I can fill up the flat section of a base. I combined a few pieces together to fill in the base and a little upright section. Then I attached it all with super glue. Now, to actually attach my fella, I drilled a 1mm hole up into his leg, and then I drilled a matching hole into the base. I can slip this guy right into position, but while I have him unattached, I might as well paint in sub-assemblies to make it easier on myself. I stuck him down to a paint handle using some double stick tape to hold the pin. Then I hit him and the base with some black primer. To get his silver armor, I have found heavy metal from scale 75 runs through the airbrush beautifully, and in one coat, I had him super shiny. Now to give him a wash, I thinned down some Army Painter Grim Black Speed paint a lot with medium. About 1 part paint to 3 parts water. I slobber this all over the model, laying it down heavy and quick, so it settles in all the nooks and crannies. Once that was dry, I hit the dark black parts, like his bolter and the in-between section of his armor with some pure grim black. Now he's honestly almost done. It's a super easy scheme. The Astral Knights wear blue on their trim, and I used Imperial Navy to base coat the rim of his shoulder pads, one of his knees, and the armor of his bolter. Then I mixed some white paint into the blue to brighten it up, and I started layering on some highlights, putting this new color over the highest spots on the shoulder. After this first highlight, I added more white paint and I did another smaller highlight right over my previous one. Then I did another round with a light blue, applying this like an edge highlight. It's almost like I'm painting the blue as a non-metallic metal. I want these accent colors to be pretty aggressive with the highlighting because there is so little to do. I want them to look as exciting as the chromy metal on the rest of them. For the banners on him, I hit these with the white paint I've been using to lighten the blue. And on his right shoulder, I painted the tactical arrow, making it nice and big so it really fills up the shoulder. I highlighted the arrow a little, following the highlights of the trim, and now he's mostly done. I just need to paint the decorations. I can work with an extremely limited palette for this guy. I threw some Dryad Bark Brown and darkened it with the black paint and put this over the sheath of his knife and on his belt. I always go back and forth on if Space Marine belts are a leather belt worn over their pants or if it's just a belt looking part of their pants. Because this guy has so little contrast, I'm going with leather belt. After the base coats, I did some scratchy highlighting and glazing of my pure brown color, and then I mixed in some white paint into this color and did a few edge highlights and micro scratches. One other detail to hit on this fella is the purity seal on his reliquary. I mixed a tiny bit of brown into my white to make a tan, and I base coated the paper. Then for the wax seal, I introduced another color, red. He has just a little bit of red. I base coated the wax seal in a dark red, and then I highlighted the raised details with pure red. And speaking of that pure red, the Astral Knights wear red lenses. I base coated the big ol' eye lenses in black in preparation for some red. I laid down a nice big triangle of dark red in each eye, then a few layers of brighter red towards the front. Then at the very front edge of the lens, I painted a line of yellow to make the bright reflection in his eye. To finish him off, I put a small dot of white at the corner of each lens, and this is the classic way to do Space Marine lenses. And you know what? The helmet is really growing on me. I think I was wrong, the bigger eyes give him a lot of expression. Although I feel like I still don't love the old classic Space Marine gemstone eyes. But you know what I'm sure I like? All the awesome hobby products available from EonsOfBattle.com. Over there we have all kinds of hobby goodies, Greytide Studio bits to spice up your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, basing cork, and we got glue. Ultra thin and ultra thick super glue. And we have terrain. The best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month members get a credit good for any one terrain pack we've ever made or the brand new one. New in March we have created the Creeping Forest. A collection of mysterious living creatures that can populate a board perfectly for any fantastical wargame. Weave your models in between the scuttling crab trees, and you'd better watch your step or you'll get bit by the timber mimics. As you wander through a forest of monstrous mushrooms dripping with colorful toxins, you might come across the Land Kraken, a master of camouflage in a very dangerous encounter. This wondrous terrain collection was invented by us and is available physically and as STL from EonsOfBattle.com. Now that my marine is painted, I can add in some decals. For over the tactical symbol, I threw on a white number 4, and I also put put one of these on his knee as well. This Astral Knight must have been a member of the 4th Company before he met his untimely end. Now for his left shoulder, he needs his chapter symbol, and the Astral Knights have the same chapter symbol as the Sable Swords, the chapter that would be created to fill the void left by the destruction of the Astral Knights. 2 crossed swords. I think that's simple enough to freehand. I started out laying down a big ol' X over the shoulder pad. Then I painted 2 little parallel lines to make the handguard, connecting them to form an X, and then bulking up the intersections to get them to match the illustration. It's a little rough, but it definitely gets the job done. Now, my little Marine is ready to die. I'm really digging the chromy Space Marine armor. I was a little nervous that he'd look conspicuously Necron-y because the Astral Knights are like anti-Necron guys, and he's on a Necron base, and he's silver like the Necrons. But I think the blue accents really pull him in a colder direction, and so he doesn't feel like a Necron Space Marine. Also, the lore of the Astral Knights, 30 Space Marines and a Dreadnought, that has been knocking around in my head, and I've been thinking about list building. Obviously, you could just take 30 Intercessors and a Redemptor Dreadnought, and that's like 600 points in game, and just fill the rest of your list with like normal things, Vindicators, Repulsor Executioners, Gladiators, that are good and are gonna be the actual thing doing work in your army. But what if you really did have to make 30 Space Marines work? There would definitely be something to just making your Astral Knights secret Black Templars or Blood Angels, where you have distinct units that can turn a regular old Space Marine into a melee powerhouse. But that doesn't feel Space Marine-y. Like when I think Space Marines, I think classical ranged shooty Space Marines. And my brain kind of goes to the old Devastator squad. Now, Games Workshop doesn't want you to play Devastator squads. They made all of the guns hit on 4s, which is really mean. But they do have heavy, so they could be getting to 3s. Or if you have some Incursor Marines running around, they can give +1 to hit against things that they shoot at. So you can get it down to 3. And then Oath of Moment can give you re-rolling 3s. So all of a sudden, all those weird, wacky, heavy weapons can be shooting like a normal Space Marine should be able to shoot. This gets a little extra spicy when you think about units like the Stormspeed or Hailstrike, which gives the rest of your army +1 AP against the same thing that it shot at. All of a sudden, the gravity guns, 3 shots hitting on 3s, re-rolling, anti-vehicle 2 up. It's only AP -2, but flat damage 3. This starts to get a little spicier when you combine it with units like the Stormspeed or Hailstrike, which gives the rest of your army +1 AP against the same thing that it shot at. All of a sudden, there might be something to the Grav Gun. Grav Guns fall apart because they're only AP -1, but AP -2, they are anti-vehicle 2 up, so you could be handing your opponent 10 saves, AP -2, flat damage 3. That starts to do a little something. That is a very unusual thing with shooty Space Marines. I kind of want to run it and see what would happen. It's only 120 points. That's kind of cheap. It's probably still not very good, but I feel like it's definitely about as good as you can make just regular shooty Space Marines. Or you just go Hellblasters, but for some reason I just never take Hellblasters. I don't know, there's definitely some juice to be found with regular old Space Marines, and it is a fun rabbit hole to go down. But right now, I gotta get this little guy on a base. I blasted my Necron-y base with some white, doing a few coats to work it into the nooks and crannies. Then I broke out the Death Metal, a dark brassy color, and I took a makeup sponge and I started stamping this on. The flat sponge left this color behind on the raised areas, but kept it out of the recesses, which is perfect because I want those recesses glowing. I put some neon green ink into my airbrush and I dusted this all over the base, tinting all the exposed white paint to give it that otherworldly energy that the Necrons are known for. And while I had this green in my airbrush, I held my Astral Knight upside down and I dusted this onto him to help sell that object source lighting. Now that the green is on there, I dry brushed the base with some more Death Metal to darken the edges and give some more contrast between the dark metal and the bright green. I hit the rim of the base with some black paint, and then I attached my knight down with some thick super glue to lock him down permanently. He is ready for his final battle. Look at this little guy. This is not a mini, this is a diorama of an Astral Knight in his final moments, running around a Necron tomb world, looking to melt a bomb something important. I am really digging the metal Space Marine armor look. I kinda want to paint some of my Marines with metal armor. I know that there's a Black Templar's successor chapter. Well, technically, there's no such thing as a Black Templar successor chapter, but there are Black Templar Crusades who will paint their armor different colors. And I'm pretty sure one of them out there is silver. I don't know, but this is a slick look, I dig it. With this model in my hand, that means that there is only 29 Astral Claws out there and 1 Dreadnought. Please let me know in the comments below what other Space Marine legions should I take a look at next.